Here again from the School of Podcasting is 2018 inductee Dave Jackson to introduce our second 2024 inductee, Daniel J. Lewis.
I'm here to talk about the many ways Daniel J. Lewis has helped the podcasting community and literally just some of his accomplishments along the way. He started off with a show called The Ramen Noodle, and then later Daniel was listening to some of these podcasts about podcasting, but they weren't really talking about what he wanted to talk about. How dare you? Right? So he started the Audacity to podcast, which is kind of a lucky name because at the time, everybody was searching for the software Audacity and they're trying to figure out how to podcast. But really, it's one thing to be lucky to have people click play once. It's another thing to have them come back and keep pressing play again, and again. And Daniel is very detail-oriented. And so I was checking over the Audacity to podcast. This is actually true. He did an episode where he was measuring the download speed of the media host, and I believe measuring in milliseconds. And he said each test was performed 10 consecutive times because, 9 wasn't enough. And those results combined and calculated regional and global averages, and he goes on, and of course there was a chart. He puts the D in details. Other shows he's been part of include the Podcasters Roundtable with Ray Ortega and some guy named Dave Jackson. And he did not one, but 2 shows about the TV show Once. And what's amazing about this is that show started off great and got bad quick. And Daniel had people listening to a podcast that they had quit watching. So he had an engaged audience. I thought this was cool. While other podcasters create products and then they hope they can somehow attract the audience that wants that product, Daniel did the opposite. He attracted an audience and then said, what do you need? And so he did everything from web design, artwork. He created a WordPress plugin called Social Subscribe and Follow. He created an SEO for Podcasters course, the Podcaster Society. This one was hand-built for him. In fact, you've probably seen his stats this week at Podfest, Podcast Industry Insights. Again, the man loves stats and details. Recently, he launched Podgagement. Why? Because he listened to his audience and he gave them what they want. It gives you tools to engage your audience. And if everybody knows about audience engagement, it's Daniel J. Lewis. And while he loves podcasting, he absolutely adores his son. And when he was awarded full custody, he stepped away for podcasting for 5 years to be a full-time dad. He's now back producing the Audacity to podcast, co-hosting a show called The Future of Podcasting with some guy named Dave Jackson, and is involved, I'm very happy to say, with the Podcasting 2.0 initiative. Because again, Daniel is doing what he does best. He's thinking outside the box, he's listening, and he's building a community and helping the podcasting space move forward. So once again, his peers have voted him into a respected establishment, and that's why it is my absolute honor to induct Daniel J. Lewis into the Academy of Podcasters Hall of Fame.
Words are powerful. So powerful that they can change minds, inspire action, win friends, and create opportunities. or they can destroy all of that. But it was with the spoken word that our universe was created. And it is with the written word that our eternities can even be changed. I've long had a fascination with words. I think it started with my fascination with the art of audio when a childhood best friend introduced me to Adventures in Odyssey, a children's audio drama for Christian kids. I would fall asleep listening to episodes with an earbud in my right ear, which I still think is maybe why this ear canal is a little bit bigger than the other one. Every night, I could quote these episodes verbatim. And that audio drama even led to my first business as a teenager, selling and marketing. I also started public speaking when I was only 13 years old in front of a grading committee of one. The Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, my father, who along with my mother, I'm so happy to have here tonight, and my sister watching nearby. And Dad and Mom, I must confess to you, you've been part of my social experiment. Now that you know what a podcast is, and have listened to some yourself, all without my being a good son and pressuring you to, I know that podcasting is truly mainstream. So thank you for your contribution to science. I discovered podcasts in 2005 when my 2.5-hour long daily commute to my dream job, the dream job was great. The daily commute, however, was draining my soul, and local talk radio was frying my brain cells with the advertisements and sports ball stuff. But a coworker started raving about this thing called podcasts coming to iTunes 4.9. So I checked it out, and I was immediately hooked. I got so deep into podcasts that my day job had to put a firewall on iTunes because when you would download the episodes, which I would always download, my favorite episodes, it would crash the network and break the internet for us. But that didn't stop me. I would get to the office early or stay late just so I could download all the episodes of my favorite podcasts, which I then loaded onto my laptop computer, which I then put in the passenger seat of my car so I could listen to the episodes while I was on that commute. The episodes coming through the speakers in my laptop computer. Because after all, at home, I had a insufferable dial-up internet connection and couldn't really download any podcast back then. And yes, it truly was a dark and savage time back then. Like probably all of you, I immediately started thinking of the podcast that I could host because I felt like I had something to share. I understood the process enough, and I even heard podcasts that validated some of my ideas. However, the torture of perfectionism kept me from launching any of those ideas until I heard from two people around the same time. Luria Petrucci, then going by Callie Lewis, and the other was a local friend I had just met because I wanted to know if anyone in all of Cincinnati was on this new thing back then called Twitter. And that friend was Cliff Ravenscraft, the podcast answer man. Are we still contractually obligated to say that whenever we say his name? I think we are. But they both said in their own ways, just start. So in April 2007, I finally did just start. But again, my struggle with perfectionism meant that even that 10-minute clean comedy podcast was basically a pod fade in progress with only 9 episodes in my first 2.5 years. Nonetheless, podcasting forever changed my life. And I believe that podcasting was even a thing God used to save my life. He had podcasting there for me when I messed up a relationship and the depression turned my dream job into a daily torture. But a wise friend told me, Daniel, the world needs the ramen noodle. God provided podcasting as a path from that job to my new dream of entrepreneurship. Podcasts and my audience, many of you were there for me when I went through the deep wounds, shame, and betrayal of an unwanted divorce, and when others tried to slander and destroy me. And podcasting is still there for me, enabling me to help others and serve my greatest earthly calling, loving my son, who is here tonight. And it's because of the sacrifices that I make for him and his dreams, and because of my self-doubt from past events, that I questioned whether I would ever get to be behind a microphone again or on stage again. But podcasting kindly pulled me back in, like friends and loved ones around a warm campfire. So I guess what I'm saying is, podcasting, would you marry me? I could go on for hours about why I love podcasting and how we can all make it better for everyone, which is exactly why I have a podcast, to do exactly that thing. And I do a lot of other things too, to help pour into the podcast industry and pour my heart into it. And many others have challenged, inspired, and helped me. And I wish I had the time to tell you all the reasons, but I want them to know they each played an important part in my story. Dad and Mom, focus on the family. Jerry Goldstein, Ken Ham, Dan Zerdell, Mark Chichera, Steve Jobs, Rod Martin, Leo Laporte, and the original cast of Twit, Luria Petrucci, Mignon Fogarty, John Wilkerson, Jeff Roney, Joel Lineweber, Matthew D. Jordan, Jason Rennie, Daniel Johnson Jr., Cliff Ravenscraft, Angelo Mendato, David Denna, James Kennison, Dan Miller, whom we lost just last Sunday, Justin Lucas Savage, Steve Stewart, Emily Prokop, Todd Uterstadt, and Jenny Carr, as I once knew her. And I'm so grateful for the talented people I've gotten to work with: John Buchanan, Ravi Prakesh Singh, Steve Moody, Mark DeCote, Steve Lee, Dave Lee, Lex Friedman, Jessica Kufferman, Heather Osgood, Dave Jackson, Ray Ortega, Jeremy Laughlin, and the many other co-hosts in my past podcasts and Noodle.mx podcast network. Also Gordon Firemark, Todd Cochran, Rob Walsh, Rob Greenlee, Mark Asquith, James Cridland, Eve Terra, Jordan Harbinger, Dave Jones, and of course, the podfather, Adam Curry. In the morning. And it's been my joy to educate, advocate for, and innovate for all kinds of other podcasters through my podcasting products and episodes of the Audacity podcast. And I will now read the names of all my audience members. I started my deeper journey into podcasting and continue to seek innovation in the industry for you, because I want you to someday be on someone else's list of inspirations. And I believe that podcasting enables anyone, even from our closets or our basements, to stand up for life and liberty, to speak for the voiceless, to inspire with knowledge or laughter, and to change the world, even if you change the world for only one other person. Because I've been that one other person many times. And that is why I strive to give you the guts and teach you the tools so that you too can have the, say it with me if you know what's coming, the audacity to podcast. To God and God alone be the glory. Thank you. Thank you.